Good afternoon, everybody. So after that exercise, I know you're fully awake and alive. Lunch was delicious. Let me just say thank you. I never expected to find real jerk chicken in London. But anyway, it was pretty good. So basically, this afternoon, I'm coming to you from the CARICOM Development Fund, one of the sponsors of this event. Thank you to David and his team at ACSIS for this invitation. And I just want to speak to you about what we've been doing in the innovation space at the CARICOM Development Fund. So it's increasingly evident that islands are disproportionately affected by the onslaught of climate change. As you can hear, I'm Jamaican. And of course, while I wasn't there in Jamaica when Hurricane Melissa hit, I've had several moments of silence to the people of Jamaica, to my family. And if you see me getting emotional, it's really just going back to the 28th of October. And really, it's been really difficult since then to pick up the pieces. So we know that small island states in the tropical belt frequently devastated by hurricanes that are increasing in their ferocity, face existential risks. And this risk not only is substantial, but is also rising. To give an example, we heard about Dominica earlier, where 220% of its GDP was wiped out by the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Right now, we're still counting the numbers for Jamaica. We heard one of the presenters this morning mentioned about $9.5 billion US. And I suspect at the end of the day, when we get to those actual numbers, we'll be looking at double digits in terms of the billions of US dollars to pick up the pieces and really to get back to normalcy. And that could take us years, if not decades, to really get back to where we were on the 27th of October. So really, there is no tolerable level of insurance premium that could ensure Dominica and even Jamaica against losing those levels of GDP. And this happens every so often. So consider the actual passage of hurricane that can really create that level of disaster on any particular economy. The rising probability of increasing loss and damage from climate change with a growing correlation with other loss and damage makes insurance against loss and damage for climate change at tolerable premium uncommercial. The early path for these timelines, we can do one of three things: to urge countries to hasten their reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, to press for mechanisms to finance climate-related loss and damages. And really, the only thing that we can do to control really is to build resilience and ensure sustainability. Building resilience will take a whole lot of precious money. It is not necessary that everything that is resilient costs more. A bridge, for example, that can quickly be folded up and during a hurricane and then set back after may be resilient, but we're talking about comprehensive resilience, where we're talking about building resilient houses, building resilient livelihoods, resilient supply chains, resilient healthcare, resilient communities, and resilient bodies and minds. Resilience needs to connect everything from the seabed to the skyline. So we're not just talking about you're looking immediately at a quick fix. We're looking at permanent fixture right throughout. Many Caribbean countries are facing economic and fiscal challenges. We know that much of the countries in the Caribbean, the debt to GDP is really burdened, and just looking at what is needed to build back after a disaster, you're seeing north of what the governments can hold on their balance sheet. So we know that the government alone, the public sector alone, cannot do this in terms of building resilience. While public sector balance sheets are stretched, private sector savings and institutions are fully with liquidity. We recognize that there's an estimated 20 billion of savings in banking systems, not just within the region, but even further afield in the diaspora. There is some 30 billion in non-bank institutions like pension funds, insurance funds, foundations, and even credit unions. Beyond private savings of the regions and, of course, in the diaspora, there is some 1 trillion of international savings managed by institutions that have declared they wish to invest in offsetting, reversing, mitigating, adapting, and even addressing loss and damage related to climate change. Significant funds and instruments have been set up in the past to address these issues, but tends to overlook the specific needs of small tropical islands with reference to ease of accessibility and affordability of funds disbursed to where they're needed most. Until we create a mechanism from the region, for people of the region, to be implemented by people of the region who know the cultural, geographical, and socioeconomic dynamics, then there will continue to be gaps in addressing the uniqueness of small island tropical states, especially those in the Caribbean. The region and our stakeholders used to respond proactively to building community preparedness and to offer transformative solutions. So at the CARICOM Development Fund, we are basically innovating these kinds of financing instruments. In 2024, we launched the Caribbean Community Resilience Fund. And this is a fund, blended financing fund. We heard several of the speakers spoke earlier, where blended financing really is intended to bring various parties, various sources of non-traditional financing to create the largest impact within the region. The intent really is to support Caribbean economies to build resilience and mitigate against adverse effects of climate change, really to advance economic diversification and infrastructure development, also to attract commercial investors into underserved regions, especially when you look at frontier and emerging markets. And we also want to showcase that we can actually deploy capital into resilience building industries and that it actually happens. So I'm not just here to talk the talk, but also to walk the walk. What we've done is in these blended financing facilities that we develop, we create the element in terms of providing first loss capital. The CARICOM Development Fund, we're acting as a development financing institution, that layer that de-risks the entire pool of investments within a particular fund. And that is necessary because first loss capital is really that new level of financing within the Caribbean region. I mean, it's been happening in the first and developed world, but certainly in the Caribbean, it's the first of its kind, where we're de-risking the funds to attract investors that wouldn't normally come into the space. And to date, we have invested $15 million in the Caribbean Community Resilience Fund, where that has 5 times the amount. So we are being catalytic. Sorry, I said 5. That 15 million, the 5 at the end really messed me up there, but it's actually 10 times. So that 15 million, we have been able to attract $150 million into the fund. Thank you very much. When we structured the fund, the intent was to, and I see I'm just about at time, the intent was to raise $100 million to catalyze investments in the space. But given the interest that we've generated, and we're not just talking development finance institution, we're not just talking multilateral development banks, but we're talking pension funds, we're talking the private sector, we're talking foundations, we're talking large family offices. We've been able to raise $150 million. We're still open. We have the flexibility to upsize that to $200 million because we recognize that this fund is based in Jamaica, with Cygnus Capital being the fund managers, a private sector with significant track record, which is important. Now, we recognize that with what's happened in Jamaica, we have the flexibility to upsize to $200 million. Still a small drop in the bucket for what is needed in terms of resilience building and capacity development within the region. But certainly, of course, there's so much more to go. We are actually in partnership with Afrexim Bank, who's also a sponsor of this event. We're actually now in the process of developing another fund that's looking at green growth, resilience, sustainability facility. And we intend to upscale that to $250 million US dollars targeted to the public sector. The resilience fund that I spoke about before is targeted at the private sector, as we recognize that these are the institutions and the engines of the economy, a little bit distracting. So the call for action really is to raise awareness, to raise the funds, to continue to have the conversation, especially to developers who are interested to come into the Caribbean to do business and to engage us in terms of climate action, building resilience, and just raising the awareness for everyone. Thank you so much. Cheers.